Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I'll be discussing the internal rows over the Tories' latest attempts to turn the UK into a human rights black spot, as MPs express their objection to aspects of the illegal migration bill. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So now that we've got a few hours breathing space on what a sports presenter can and can't say, let's look at the objections to the latest asylum bill, which even some Conservatives have, because that's what's important. I have many objections to it, but only the Conservatives determine whether this bill goes through or not, ultimately. And so I'm going to focus on what even Conservatives will look at it and go, that's ridiculous. I mean, some even object, as Lineker did, to the language used. If you look at the announcement, I've mentioned this on a couple of streams, you look at the announcement made a week ago, pushing this dehumanising language. It's about othering refugees, of course, making them sound like they're not people, or not people like you or I. Does that sound like another group from history? But as I've already said, does no good to make those comparisons, because all you end up with is an absolute clown show in the media, which is what we got. But you look at the slogan that Rishi Sunak put on his lectern last week, stop the boats. Stop the boats. Why? What have the Tories got against boats? Not a thing, we're an island. We do sort of rely on boats. It's not the boats they want to stop. It doesn't matter how many boats wash up on the shore, no one's got an issue. Oh, a free boat, brilliant. It's not the boats, it's the people. But they can't say that. They can't say stop the asylum seekers or stop the refugees, because that reminds the people they need on their side that these are people. So they say stop the boats because nobody gives a crap about a boat. Easy to support a policy that stops a boat because that doesn't hit your compassion centre. You don't have compassion for a boat. It's a bit of wood or fiberglass or rubber. Nobody's got an issue with what the government want to do with a boat. Is it my boat? No, well, do what you like with it then. So they use the slogan to further dehumanise the policy. And some Conservatives have, said that the language being used is not acceptable. But the general thrust of the bill, for me, has shades of the internal market bill. This is what Boris Johnson initially tried to use to break international law over the Northern Ireland Protocol. Steve Barclay, as in his cabinet, announced to Parliament that it would indeed break international law. Well, that was that, wasn't it? Even though Tory MPs trashed what was left of their honour and voted it through the Commons, there was no way the House of Lords could pass a bill which the government had explicitly stated, yes, breaks the law. So the government had to amend it. Well, we have a similar thing with the illegal migration bill now. Now, English is a funny language, isn't it? You say illegal migration bill. Now, linguistically, it could be the migration which is illegal or the bill which is illegal. You can usually tell from the context. In this particular case, it's fairly clear the government intended to mean the migration. It's to deal with illegal migration. But it could equally apply because the bill is illegal as well. And that is not just the opinion of every legal expert around the world who's got anything to say about it. Even the government say that it probably breaks the law. However, this isn't why some Tory MPs are objecting. After all, they voted in favour of breaking international law so many times. What's one more? Even Priti Patel is said to be unhappy with some aspects of it. And she began the groundwork on it. I mean, how unconscionably inhumane do you have to make a piece of legislation before Priti Patel thinks you're going a bit far? I mean, I know it's helpful for Rishi Sunak to be seen as being able to achieve the impossible. He managed to work out a practical implementation for the Northern Ireland Protocol, which his Tory MPs all voted for years ago, that they could agree on. He did that. That seemed impossible. He achieved that. Well done. Now he's promoted an asylum bill that's got Priti Patel asking, are we the baddies? In reality, it might be that Patel's got no issue with the bill at all. He's just sulking that she's not the one driving it. But it's still an odd sight to see Rishi Sunak, a man who was seen as more normal, more reasonable. You've got Rishi Sunak, you go, okay, he's a Tory, but actually, as Tories go, he's at least human. Less narcissistic than Boris Johnson, less crazy than Liz Truss. Okay, we'll settle for what we can get. To see him promote a bill which Priti Patel is saying is a bit over the top, that is something to behold. And the first Tory MP to have actually come out and say she is going to vote against this bill, Caroline Noakes. Now, sometimes when an MP stands up, backbench MP stands up and says they're going to vote against it, it can be a sign of a brewing rebellion. Doesn't necessarily mean there will be one in this case, because Noakes is known for being one of the less insane members of the party, so she's a bit of an outlier. And if more Tories do start criticising the bill like this, and especially saying that they may not vote for it in its current form, Sunak is going to end up looking more than a little stupid, because he allowed his MPs, he didn't join in himself, but he allowed his MPs, including members of his cabinet over whom he has much closer control, to make a huge fuss about a football presenter saying that the policy was crap. How ridiculous will he look when his own MPs are saying the same thing? So what are the main objections from Noakes and other Tory MPs? The first is that it breaks the law. Clearly breaks the Refugee Convention, although the government don't care about that. But it's also likely to be a breach of the European Convention of Human Rights. That's a more serious issue. Won't stop Tory MPs voting for it, but it will be seen by the more sensible ones as just wasting parliamentary time. Why are we wasting our time for something that we can't actually implement anyway? Can't possibly work. We've got problems that actually need to be fixed with parliamentary time, where we need realistic solutions. Why are we wasting our time on this? But there are other issues which even some of the crazy ones have. It's not clear from the bill where the government send these refugees that we don't want to accept. Bear in mind, the Rwanda plan involved paying a foreign government a ridiculous amount of money for maybe a few hundred asylum seekers. And even this is hideously illegal, so none have actually been sent. But even if the plan hadn't fallen foul of the law, it would not have made a scratch on the asylum backlog. Realistically, the government don't have the power to just deport people because it wants to. All this bill seems to give them the power to do is hold them in limbo. They won't have asylum claims processed because the bill tells UK authorities not to process them. It will force them to deem their claims ineligible. But it won't be the same as denying the claim. So there's nowhere to send them, which is madness. If they just processed the claims, they could then deport all of those who fail perfectly legally. No fuss from the lefty lawyers. And those whose claims are successful can then find work and start to chip away at our million worker shortage in this country. And what this bill will do in practical terms, never mind what it's intended to do, what it'll do in practical terms, it means that the non-genuine claimants, the ones that everyone agrees should be deported, stay in the UK. Because there isn't a process to prove they don't have a genuine claim. You cannot say someone doesn't have a valid claim unless you process their claim. I mean, it's not rocket surgery, is it? So these people will be detained at the taxpayer's expense, upsetting Nigel Farage, who does his tour of the hotels, or he says he does, detaining them along with those who have genuine claims, and none of them will be contributing anything back to the economy. You know, when the likes of Farage will say, oh, he's immigrants, they're draining the local services, the schools, the hospitals, all the rest of it. Absolute rubbish. Because immigrant workers contribute more to the public purse, which pays for all those services, than the average UK citizen. But these won't be, because they're not allowed to work. So they're not allowed to earn money and pay their taxes. But they will still need accommodating. So they will be a strain on local services because of this bill and because of the previous one. It's not just that the plan is inhumane and illegal. No point in going on about that because the Tories don't care about that. It's impractical. It is a bill which actively increases the number of refugees who need to be accommodated in this country. I believe the government figures show that about 1 in 4 asylum claimants are found to not have a valid claim. We deny 1 in 4, roundabout. So first of all, the government's own figures show that the vast majority are genuine. But as importantly, it means that if the government just processed the claims properly, as we used to, we didn't used to have a problem with this, they could deport a quarter of them without very much hassle at all, just gone. This bill prevents that roughly 1 in 4 from being deported and prevents the rest of them from doing the jobs that we cannot fill at the moment. It doesn't stop the channel crossings, because that's their big thing. Oh, it'll dissuade people from coming across the channel. How will it? Someone who risks their life in a dodgy boat isn't going to be deterred by this legislation, even if they know about it, which is very unlikely in the first place. Like, how many people fleeing war and persecution around the world are really going to be experts on UK asylum law? And this is what a number of Tory MPs object to. You know, not enough of them. It doesn't actually solve the problem. It makes it worse, in fact. All of these asylum bills, which Patel and Braverman between them have pushed, have actively increased the problem. Now, whether they've been doing it because they're a bit dim or because they want the problem to get bad so that they can enrage their voters for their own personal support base, I do not know. But there are at least some Tory MPs who look at this and say, this doesn't reduce our asylum backlog. It actively prevents us deporting people who have no valid claim, because we don't know they have no valid claim because we're not processing it. And the final objection is the same one which some Tory MPs have been raising for some time. If people cannot claim asylum in the UK, where can they claim it? It's not possible to travel to the UK via any route and claim asylum which is acceptable in UK law. So they'll say, oh, they should come by the Eurostar or they should come by the ferry. They're not allowed to. They're not allowed to. So how do they claim asylum? When this was put to Suella Braverman a few months ago, in a select committee of Parliament, it was put to her, how do they actually claim asylum? She actually said they have to come here by any means necessary. She said that. And this is an issue for the small number of reasonably compassionate Tory MPs, or at least ones with a brain, but especially veterans, because they want to know in particular how their Afghan comrades are supposed to come here when our government promised to move heaven and earth to help them. And yet there's no way for them to get here. And if they do get here, if they find some way to get here, our authorities with this bill are going to be told, you are not allowed to accept an asylum claim. That upsets some of the veterans. But there we are. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, please click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, the join button for memberships. And until next time, I'll see you later.